After doing these activities that I'm about to share with you, your students will be able to regulate their emotions better, and they'll just show better behavior overall in the classroom. I'm Katherine Barker, and today I'm going to be talking about teaching empathy to your students, as well as a handful of activities that you can use in your classroom to get started teaching empathy right away. Empathy has an emphasis in experiencing someone else's emotions specifically. So being able to be in someone else's shoes and really understand what are they feeling right now? What are they experiencing? What is going on internally? Empathy is important because students need it to help build connections. They need it to help them regulate their own emotions, and it really just promotes helping behaviors, right? When someone's empathetic and you can understand where someone else is coming from, it naturally moves you into action, into doing helpful, kind things for that person, right? Because you can imagine, gosh, I can imagine what that feels like. I bet they must be feeling this, this, and this. I'm going to do this to help them. This is something I would like. So that's why it's so important to teach our students empathy. We want them to be able to take on another person's perspective and then have that move them into action, into helping behaviors. So for kids specifically, empathy can help prevent bullying, it can help students make friends easier, and it just helps students be able to receive help from others. So empathy is a very important skill that we want your students to have in their emotional toolbox. Empathy is a very complex ability, right? It's not something that is just learned in one sitting and you move on. It really needs to be taught and reinforced over and over again, which is why we want to teach these activities to our students, but we really want to be discussing empathy on a daily basis, pointing it out, rewarding students, acknowledging students when we see them showing empathy to one another. Really, we kind of want to make it a big deal in our classroom, just to really point it out and make it obvious, so that way our kids are able to start expressing it more, they start identifying it more, and they just get better at it. That's really our goal as teachers. We want to help instill good character traits in our students so they grow up and they be helpful members of the community. Okay, so let's jump into some ideas and activities that you can use in your classroom to get started to help start teaching empathy to your kiddos. So I love starting with a story, right? I feel like all lessons can just be kicked off with a great story. So here's a few stories that I can really teach your students empathy. So the first book is We're All Wonders. This is a story about a child that does not look like an ordinary kid, and he talks about how his mom calls him a wonder, but when he goes to school and playground, different places, they don't recognize him as a wonder, and how it hurts his feelings. And he later goes on and goes to a place where everyone does look more like him. The moral of the story really is that we all are unique in our own way. It's a really great book. Be sure to check it out, and it's a great book to kick off teaching empathy. Another great book that helps teach empathy is a book called Be Kind. So this is a book about a little girl that spills grape juice all over her dress, and all her classmates laugh at her. But another student is watching, and she feels empathy for her. She feels like, oh man, that must have made her feel sad, everyone laughing at her. And the whole book is her contemplating what she can do to help make that friend feel better that had the grape juice all over her dress. So she's contemplating, exploring ways that she can be kind, and really from her empathy moves her into action to doing acts of kindness for her friend. A third book that I think teaches empathy really, really well is a book called The Rabbit Listened. So this is a book about a little boy that builds a tower, and the whole thing topples down, and he's so disappointed and sad about it. And so all these little animals come up to him, and they try different ways to, I guess, make him feel better in a way. They all try to do something to help the boy feel better, but nothing they do or say helps them feel better, except when the rabbit comes along. And all the rabbit does is sit and listen. He doesn't talk, he doesn't help him build the tower, he doesn't do anything, he just listens to the little boy, and he just sits with him. And it's so wonderful because as the rabbit just sits and listens with him, the little boy starts expressing himself and really kind of says he's angry, he's sad, and just lets it all out, and all the rabbit does is sit and listen. And at the end of it, the little boy feels better. And really the whole moral of the story is that sometimes listening can be even better than a hug. Sometimes just being there, right? So I think it's such a great story to help kids remember that sometimes just being there for a friend is enough and is helping them show empathy and just really listening and understanding what is that other person going through. So that's also another fantastic book that you can try out. So first we start with a story about teaching what empathy is, then we move into having your students identify their own emotions. So you may be wondering why we're having them identify their own emotions. Shouldn't we be having them identify other people's? You can't show empathy and understand how someone else is feeling unless you understand your own emotions first. Our kids need to understand what they're feeling before they can understand how someone else is feeling. We want them to go, oh wow, they're feeling sad. I know what that feels like. I know that feeling. So these are some activities I recommend that you use to help your students begin to identify their own emotions. So you want to have cards just with the basic emotions on them, right? And then from there, I recommend sitting down with your kiddos and talking about each one and saying, okay, this is happy. Show me what it feels like to be happy. I would talk with your students about things that can make them happy or things that bring on that emotion. And then also talk about what does it feel like physically in their body. So when I'm happy, I'm smiling. And sometimes I laugh and I want to sing a song and my body feels light and happy and jumpy and excited, right? When you're feeling angry, you could say, oh, when I feel angry, oh, my eyes go like this and I get really tight. My body gets really tight. And sometimes I get so mad and I feel my body shaking and getting really tight and tense. So just teaching your students what the basic emotions feel like is so powerful. Another activity you can do is just like a quick daily check-in. So have like an anchor chart with all the emotions, have your students come in and you can say, what are you feeling today? So maybe if your students come in one at a time, you can have them point to the emotions and share what they're feeling. Or if you're sitting on the carpet and you're saying good morning, you could say, okay, show me on your face what you're feeling today. And you can have your anchor chart behind you and have them kind of look at the emotions and kind of identify and show you what they're feeling that day. Another super easy activity that's really great and hands-on is having Play-Doh mats. So having like a little blank face and having your students roll out different faces. I would do it where you could do it in a small group where you say, okay, let's all make a sad face right now. Okay, let's roll out our Play-Doh. How does a sad face look? Oh, it's that U shape, it's that upside down, the rainbow face. Let's make a rainbow with our Play-Doh and our eyes, maybe some tears. So you can build the different emotions on the Play-Doh mat using the Play-Doh, which is also just such a great hands-on activity for your kids. Okay, so let's jump into the third thing that you can do. So first start with story, have your students identify their own emotions, and then move into role playing. Role playing and pretend play work so well because students naturally are pretending to be someone else, right? They're pretending to act out and be someone already. So pretend play just does this naturally, which is why pretend play is so good for our young kiddos because it helps them actually learn empathy, right? They understand what it's like to experience the world from another's perspective, whether that's a grocer or it's a police officer or whoever they're pretending to be. Pretend play is such a fantastic way to help teach your students how to be empathetic. It just comes very naturally to kiddos anyways. So we're gonna use role playing and pretend play to help your students understand empathy and help move them into being kind and doing random acts of kindness. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out my video on kindness after this. It can help you create just a classroom environment of just really kindness and empathy and love. Okay, so role playing and pretend play scenarios. So scenario number one of your students is playing at recess and they notice a student is playing alone and they look sad. So what can they do? So that can be one scenario that you can use to role play. Another scenario is someone fell down and hurt themselves. A third scenario is a student is building a tower of blocks and by themselves and another student comes over and they want to help like add to their tower or build to their tower, but the other student doesn't really want to let them because it's their tower. So that's a third scenario that you can use to help kind of jumping off point to help teach your students empathy. So let's do a quick recap. So we talked about what empathy is, why it's important. We talked about starting with a story, having your students identify their own emotions, and then using role playing to help teach empathy to your kiddos. Okay, and that's it for teaching empathy to your students. Be sure to check out my video on kindness after this. And if you found this video helpful or useful at all, be sure to like and subscribe. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, happy teaching.